Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. Today, we are speaking with Phil Johnson. Phil is the founder and CEO of the Master of Business Leadership Program. He is also the host of MBL podcast. MBL has been awakening success in entrepreneurs and executives for the past 31 years with billions in career revenue. Phil, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Enrique. It's an honor to be on your show, and I hope I can live up to your introduction.
I'm sure you will. And we're so happy to have you as we take this time to get into all the information that we'll be talking about. Take a moment and tell us a little bit about you.
Sure. In a month and a half from now, I'm going to be 70 years old, and I'm really excited about that. I've been an executive coach working with executives and entrepreneurs around the world for the last 31 years. I started on this journey 55 years ago, and there's a whole story behind that. And I really love what I do. I work with executives and organizations to help them become more conscious and achieve better results.
And I'm loving the fact that you are coming up on your birthday. Happy birthday. And I also love the fact that you've been doing what we're going to be talking about for as long as I've been alive. So it's a wonderful to have you discussing this thing today. Folks, we're going to be speaking about EQ and AI. I couldn't have thought of two better things to talk about, especially in the leadership realm. EQ and AI and its impact on leadership. And I wanted to ask you, Phil, you speak about in your program higher consciousness. I love that you do that because it is a place that we need to really dive into and be conscious of. So what is higher consciousness and what role does that have in the corporate setting?
Let me preface by saying that whatever results we're currently getting is a reflection of our current level of consciousness. We cannot get better results beyond our current level of consciousness. So, in order to get better results, we need to raise our level of consciousness. And believe it or not, we're only actually conscious about 3 to 5% of the time. The rest of the time, we're relying on our habits to determine the bulk of our behavior and our results. So, becoming more conscious enables us to make better choices, and it also enables us to connect at a deeper level with ourselves and each other, and that leads to better results.
I love that. Folks, we are habit bound. And that's just the only way I could say it. If we're only conscious for that short amount of percentage in our life, the rest is habits, then realize that if you're not getting what you want out of life, it may be your habits. It may be your habits. So thank you for sharing that, Phil. That's so enlightening. And I'm sure that that's going to have some people thinking, hold up now, I need to do a survey and an audit about my habits because we're not getting too far. Now, in the corporate setting, in the field that we operate in, leadership, emotional intelligence is by far one of the greatest things that you can actually get knowledge about. And not only knowledge, but start putting things in order and in practice. So why is emotional intelligence so important for leaders?
Emotional intelligence, and I want to highlight what I'm about to say. The development of our emotional intelligence, and it is a developmental process. It's not an intellectual process. Will guarantee, and I want to underline big bold letters, guarantee career, personal, and corporate success. There was a 40-year study done at UC Berkeley comparing IQ with EQ with a bunch of PhDs, and they concluded that emotional intelligence was 400% more valuable than intellectual intelligence in determining success in life. And I'll give you an example quickly of a company that's currently valued at over $3 trillion, and they're doing about $600 billion a year in revenue. And their hiring focus is emotional intelligence. That company is Apple. That's why when you walk into an Apple store, the energy you feel is an example of a more emotionally intelligent environment. They're not trying to sell you anything. They're trying to understand your pain and, if possible, offer a solution to your pain. They want you to have a great experience. And maybe you'll tell your friends and they'll tell their friends. And if you think about it, the way you feel in that environment, the energy you feel in that environment is a very different energy from the energy coming out of the stores surrounding that environment. And because of we're facing a tsunami of rapidly accelerating global change with a 500 million year old brain that doesn't like change. So we need to be developing our emotional intelligence to deal with the fear and anxiety that change and innovation always triggers in us. Does that help to answer the question?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just so important. And no doubt why Apple is doing so well if you tend to focus on EQ. It is so important, folks. And I hope that you take some notes on that. Now, earlier we started with a stat about how we use consciousness and then the predominant factor of our life, which is habit. So, what is habit stacking and how do you employ it?
So, first of all, I want you to think of our conscious and unconscious mind in this way. Think of your conscious mind as as a flea on the back of the elephant, and the elephant is your unconscious mind. The flea is our conscious mind. So whatever we practice consciously, if we do it long enough, it will automatically transfer into becoming habit. It's a process called automaticity. That's why you don't have to think anymore about how to tie your shoes or how to drive a car. It's moved from being a conscious activity to an unconscious activity. If we had to rely on our conscious mind to survive, we would be dead instantly. Our unconscious mind is stronger, it's faster, and it takes less of our metabolic energy than our conscious mind. But our conscious mind is where we get to choose what we focus on. And what we focus on eventually becomes, through our actions, it becomes habit. It's a neural network pathway we create in our brain. So ultimately, our behavior and our results are driven by our habits. And a habit has three components: it has a triggering event, an action we take, and a result. And if the result we get is something we want, we repeat the behavior. And the more we repeat the behavior, the more that activity is likely going to become habit. So all of our existing habits are getting us our current results. They're all working together simultaneously to create our behavior and our results. But if we want better results than we're currently getting, we can't get them with our current habits. Our current habits become the barrier to getting better results. If we want better results than we're currently getting, we have to develop better habits, which means that we have to move outside of our comfort zone and do different things. And that's where the rubber really meets the road, because we have significant both biological and sociological resistance to change. So that's the challenge we have in developing new habits. But we must develop new habits, better habits, if we want better results. So in the MBL program, uh, I give people better habits to develop that gets them better results. And the habit stacking is activities that helps to build awareness and works with the habits. So it's all of that is working simultaneously to create better behavior and results.
I often ask my son, what's the goal? every time he'll say, "Hey, I want to do this." What's the goal? And it's to help him focus on what it truly is that he wants and start doing away with these peripherals that are taking up his time. And habits, and I love what you just shared. In habits, imagine if you could take all those habits that give you the maximum results and you start to put them one on top of another to support even further results. I love it. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. Now, when we talk about leadership, you mentioned, hey, there's this company. They're high on EQ, the intellectual stuff. They do because they have to. They're techie, but in the grand scheme of things, EQ is predominant, and there are a lot of skills that you have to start adopting to start developing that EQ. And in leadership, there's a lot of skills that are required there. So you mentioned micro skills, right? So what are micro skills and why do we need them?
There's a difference between leadership and management. um, Management involves making improvements on what already exists. Leadership involves moving outside of the comfort zone to create new results, better results. So you can't lead the herd from inside the herd. In order to lead the herd, you've got to leave the herd in order to lead it in a better direction. And we all need to become better leaders. At some points, we're leaders, at some points, we're followers. So there's that dance, there's that interplay between leading and following. And if you need a title to get people to follow you, you're not a leader. You're simply relying on position based power to control and manipulate others. True leadership doesn't require a title, it's the behavior and results that inspire others to want to follow your example. So the micro skills and the habit stacking, all of that is a fancy way of saying we need to lower our walls and demonstrate trustability. We need to become less resistive, less judgmental, less attached to outcome. When we do that, we inspire others to do the same. And that creates not only emotional intelligence, but it also creates inspirational leadership.
And authenticity has a lot to do with that. I've often said that authenticity, vulnerability are one of the key factors for leaders to become great leaders. So, why is authenticity so crucial for leaders in the workplace today?
We've had to, over the last several hundred million years, we're going back a ways here, we've had to develop the ability to sense whether somebody's trying to help us or eat us. So we have these specialized brain cells in our prefrontal cortex that brain scientists call mirror neurons. That's mirror neurons. Your listeners, your viewers, our viewers, can Google it. Um, that's why when we walk into a room, we can sense the energy in the room. Or if we're having a conversation with somebody, we can sense whether their walls are up or not, whether they're trying to help us or take advantage of us. So that authenticity means that we've lowered our walls. We're no longer being resistive, judgmental, or attached to the outcome. And when we do that, the people around us tend to sense that. They tend to sense that they can be more of who they are around you than they can be around their victim buddies. And that creates the attraction. So you can't fake being authentic because we pick up on it.
Definitely, if you bring in a fake version of something and it has a framework of authenticity, you're going to be found out. It's not going to take long. Someone's going to pick that out. And so I agree with you. Now, AI, Oh my goodness. How much has it started to filter into everyday life? And when you talk about AI and the times that we're in, leadership, corporate settings, and how we use those things, what impact will AI have on the leaders and the workforce of tomorrow?
Oh, lots of different impacts. So, first of all, let me say that AI, as it exists today, is simply a tool that reflects our current level of consciousness. In order for us to improve on that tool, we, humanity, has to raise this level of consciousness. So AI is simply a tool. Think of Einstein having an IQ of 160 intellectually. Within the next 2 to 3 years, it's very likely that AI will have an IQ of the equivalent IQ of over 1,000. So very quickly, and it's also estimated that in the next 5 years or so, 5 to 10 years, over 60% of jobs will be replaced by AI. And a lot of those are white collar jobs. But up until this point, our focus has primarily been based on our ability to do intellectual labor, which is largely genetic. If you have a high IQ, your parents had a high IQ, their parents had a high IQ, you did nothing to develop your intellect. You simply inherited those genes. So not everybody can have 160 IQ, but everybody can develop their emotional intelligence by doing the emotional labor that requires. And the ROI is exponentially higher than intellectual intelligence. As a matter of fact, throughout history, it's been shown over and over again that intellectual intelligence without emotional intelligence has proven to be very destructive. So going forward, the focus is going to shift dramatically from a focus on intellectual intelligence to a focus on emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence is going to become a multi-trillion dollar, trillion, not billion, trillion dollar a year industry. To this point, our educational system has failed us and our employment system has failed us because it's focused primarily on our ability to do intellectual labor and has done nothing to develop our emotional intelligence. We're facing a tsunami of accelerating global change. Some scientists estimate that in this century, we could experience the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of change or 200 centuries worth of change. Nothing like that has ever happened before. And we've got a 500 million-year-old brain that doesn't like change. Put it in perspective, a 10-year-old today, by the time they're 60, will be experiencing the equivalent of a year's worth of change in 11 minutes. So here's the importance of emotional intelligence. So whenever we step outside of our comfort zone to develop a new habit or do anything new, there's a part of our old lizard brain called the amygdala that's been trying to keep us alive, safe for 500 million years by making sure we never leave the security, the safety of our cave. And if we do, it automatically triggers a release of a hormone into our bloodstream called cortisol. And that causes the executive center of our brain, our intellectual and creative center, to shut off. And we go into what psychologists refer to as an amygdala hijack. And that often causes us to do and say things we later regret. Some people lash out, some people run away, some people freeze like a deer in the headlights. When that happens in conflict situations, people die. When it happens in business or personal situations, relationships die. We burn trust. So, as an analogy, if you think of your amygdala as a very frightened 4 year old child, the development of our emotional intelligence acts like a big brother or a big sister to quiet that amygdala response down and better enable us to feel the fear and anxiety that change and innovation always triggers in us and be able to acknowledge it and move through it towards the vision of our desired results, as opposed to allowing that fear and anxiety to keep us trapped in our comfort zones. So, going forward, as the rate of global change continues to accelerate, the need for the development of our emotional intelligence is going to accelerate exponentially as well.
Folks, it's important to understand that with every change, whatever it may be, you have to look at where the next need is going to be. And EQ has been, and I would say for ages, has been needed. But EQ is going to be in the forefront of this next major change. There's no way around this. AI is going to continue to be a tool used and a tool developed, and we will have to face that as humans with an increase in emotional intelligence. That's
And
just it.
Enrique, can I? We're at a tipping point as a species on the planet, and I'm not exaggerating for effect. In relative terms, humanity's been on the planet for less than half of 1 second, and in that time, we've destroyed the climate. We're dealing with AI, CRISPR-Cas9 gene editing technology, other pandemics, that we are totally unprepared for the fear and anxiety that's going to trigger in us. We need to change our trajectory. I've mentioned to you earlier, I've been a guest on over 150 podcasts over the last couple of years talking about the value and importance of developing our emotional intelligence. We need to begin to change the trajectory of our emotional intelligence dramatically in the next 10 to 15 years in order for us to survive. And we've shown almost no willingness or ability to do the emotional labor that will require. So we're at a tipping point. The development of our emotional intelligence isn't a solution to the challenges we're facing. It is the only solution to the challenges we're facing, and it represents the next stage in our human evolution.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that, Phil. It has been a wonderful conversation. I love that we've talked about all the elements, the Make Your MBL program, but more importantly, how these things are going to come into play in the future. Now, what do you have coming up, and how can they get a hold of you, those that are listening or viewing today?
I will give you a link to my Zoom calendar, and anybody that would like to meet and continue the discussion, I'd be happy to.
Absolutely. Folks, we're going to have those links as part of the show notes and video for you to get a hold of Phil, his company, his podcast, and all the things that he's doing, and get him to share some time with you, because I tell you, this time shared today has been so valuable. Thank you, Phil, for taking out the time to be with me today. And folks, today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, and Harchester, London. If you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment right now. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that can add to our show. So if you know someone or you have a topic that you would like featured on the podcast, or you would like to sponsor our show, we'd love to hear about it by emailing us at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.